$47. That's what's left after the cap. You don't take rideshares anymore because the bank reimburses cabs if you leave the office after 10 p.m., and you almost always leave after 10 p.m. It's 1:17 in the morning. You are 23 years old with $190,000 coming at year end, and you just spent 14 hours assembling a slide deck that someone senior will present tomorrow without saying your name. Back at the apartment, you eat the meal the bank paid for. It's cold. You don't notice it's cold. Noticing takes attention, and yours is fully allocated. From the outside, this is the dream. 6 figures at 23. A business card that makes people at parties say, "Oh, wow." Not that you've been to a party in 4 months. There's no time, and you're moving too fast to even register that there's no time, let alone question of it. 80 hours a week. Every week. And for a while, that feels like the whole purpose. Like exhaustion itself has become proof that you're succeeding. In 1930, the economist John Maynard Keynes published an essay predicting that, by the time his grandchildren grew up, technology and compound growth would shrink the workweek to 15 hours, and humanity's great problem would be figuring out what to do with all the leisure. He got the compound growth exactly right. He got the 15 hours spectacularly wrong, because he never imagined a species that, handed abundance, would voluntarily choose to work more, and then call the choice a personality. You are Keynes's grandchild. You are working 80 hours. Here's the accounting principle beneath everything that follows. Time is the only resource with no replacement cycle. You can earn back money. You cannot earn back a Tuesday. Every hour you spend is spent permanently, and the account simply never refills. The money arrives quickly enough to distract you. The time leaves quietly enough that you barely notice it's disappearing. At 24, your net worth crosses $40,000, not through brilliance, but because you barely have time to spend anything. The bank feeds you 3 nights a week. Last month you took 4 flights, all business class, all fully expensed. Your actual lifestyle costs almost nothing because your actual lifestyle is the office. You feel rich. You also still don't own a couch. You sleep on a mattress on the floor of an apartment you chose purely for how close it was to the building. You've lived there for 8 months. The mattress is still on the floor, exactly where you left it on day 1. Temporary, you tell yourself. Everyone starts this way. The numbers really are working, and the numbers are working. That part is true. The question you never stop to ask is whether the life is working too. Something else is also true. You haven't called your mother in 3 weeks. Not from indifference. It's just that by the time you surface each night, it's too late to call anyone, let alone mother. You'll call on the weekend, you decide. The weekend arrives attached to a live deal. You don't call. And quietly, your units of time begin to mutate. Weeks stop existing. There are only deals. Before the Meridian pitch, after the Henderson close. Your personal calendar doesn't get deleted, it just goes blank, like a language you've slowly forgotten how to speak anymore. At 26, net worth $110,000. 1 promotion behind you. Hours unchanged. Or rather, worse actually. Because now you carry the analysts below you and the expectations of the directors above you. You are the meat in the sandwich, working today for an outcome that lives 2 levels up. You can see it clearly from here. You just can't touch it yet. Meanwhile, in a lab you'll never visit, the arithmetic of your life has already been run. Stanford researchers found that output per hour falls off sharply past 50 hours a week, and past 55, total output goes essentially flat. A person grinding 70 hours produces roughly what a person working 55 produces. You are working 80, which means the extra 25 hours are producing something, just not what you think. They're producing the appearance of dedication, visibility, reliability, a reputation as the one who never leaves. On Wall Street, that reputation is worth something. The difficult part is that the rewards arrive immediately, while the costs keep agreeing to wait. That makes the trade feel fair long after it has stopped being one. It is worth far less than you are paying for it. Because here's the trade nobody itemizes at 24. What you optimize for now determines what you have at 34. You cannot optimize for hours and for health simultaneously. You will eventually pick one. If you don't, the market will pick for you. And the market has already made a preference. At 28, net worth $240,000, 5 years in. 2 family Christmases missed, not for travel, but because a pitch was due December 26th and preparations started on the 23rd. One summer, you made it home for 4 days and spent 3 of them pacing the backyard while taking calls. Your mother has stopped asking when you're coming back. Not because she gave up, because she learned to read the silence, the way mothers often do. Your body has started sending its own memos too. A specific ache in the same spot of your back every morning. A tension headache so continuous you've stopped filing it as a headache. You call it pressure now, which sounds professional. 6 hours of sleep on a good night, 5 on a normal one. You haven't woken without an alarm in 4 years. You've forgotten that waking without an alarm is even a thing bodies do. The body, it turns out, keeps its own ledger. Every skipped meal, every 5-hour night, every midnight adrenaline spike pushed through with coffee, all of it gets recorded. The body doesn't send invoices. It sends symptoms. And symptoms arrive without appointments, without warning, and without negotiation. The World Health Organization and the ILO ran the numbers jointly. Working 55 or more hours a week is associated with a 35% higher risk of stroke and a 17% higher risk of dying from heart disease than a standard work week. You are not working 55. You never were. At 29, the ledger comes to collect. Not a cold, a full-stop collapse. One Thursday morning, your body simply says, no, and the room moves when you try to stand. 4 days alone in the apartment. You watch the same 3 things on Netflix. You stare at the ceiling. And in the silence, the first genuine silence in years, your own thoughts finally have room, and they are not especially comfortable company. For the first time, you ask the question directly, what is all of this for? Not rhetorically, not emotionally, with a calculator. Roughly $900,000 in total compensation over 6 years. Closer to $560,000 after tax. Subtract the $4,200 a month 1-bedroom, the food you actually buy, the leased car you convinced yourself you needed, the 2 obligatory trips home a year, and your net worth at 29 is $290,000. Which is not nothing, but it is not what the gross number had quietly promised at 23. Then, lying on the couch with a fever, you do the division nobody at the bank ever does out loud. 6 years, 80 hours a week, 50 weeks a year, 24,000 hours. Your effective wage across the entire run, just over $23 an hour. Numbers have a way of changing character once you divide them by time. That's when compensation stops looking like prestige and starts looking like a trade. A senior nurse earns more than that. A firefighter earns more than that. You stare at the ceiling, and the salary number and the hourly number sit side by side in your head, and you finally understand that they were never the same number. You just weren't doing the division. At 30, net worth $340,000, you run an experiment. Nothing radical. Once a week, you say no to one thing you'd have once automatically said yes to. One night, you leave at 9 instead of 1. One weekend, the laptop stays shut until Sunday afternoon. You brace yourself to get fired. You do not get fired. Nobody notices. Nobody notices. Sit with that. The 80-hour culture, it turns out, is partly a performance. The work is real, the hours are real. But the requirement that you personally be visible doing all of it at all hours, that part is largely constructed, and it sustains itself because everyone inside it is too exhausted to question it. Being seen working is not the same as creating value. A culture that rewards visibility over output will extract exactly as much visibility as you're willing to donate. You had been donating all of it. By 32, net worth $490,000, something has quietly inverted. You're better at the job than you've ever been, precisely because you work fewer hours and the remaining ones are deliberate. You've stopped doing work that should be delegated, stopped attending meetings your presence can't change. Output, unchanged. Hours, 60, not 80. And the only difference anyone registers is that you seem less exhausted. One director tells you, approvingly, that you seem more senior lately. You haven't been promoted. You've just stopped mistaking exhaustion for performance. That's when the darkest realization of the decade lands. The exhaustion was never the byproduct. It was the product. The system needed you tired. Tired people don't ask questions. Tired people don't negotiate. Tired people don't leave. At 34, net worth $720,000, and the money has started taking different shapes. A small stake in a friend's commercial property, a dividend portfolio, quietly dropping $1,400 a month into your account, whether you show up anywhere or not. And you find yourself thinking about the 24,000 hours. Not to mourn them, to value them differently. What would 24,000 hours have compounded into if more of them had gone into relationships, into health, into skills that live outside one industry? Because money compounds, but so do relationships, and so does health, and the things you neglect at 24 don't wait patiently. They charge interest in their own currency, and their currency is not dollars. The million arrives at 36, on a Wednesday, not the Tuesday you'd always quietly pictured. You're on a call when it happens. You notice the number during a brief pause between agenda items. There's no one in the room to tell. You text your sister. She sends back a string of emojis. You look at them for a long time, smiling more than you expected. And a million at 36, after a decade of 80-hour weeks, does not feel like freedom. It feels like proof. The system worked. The trade went through. You gave the time. You got the money. The contract was honored exactly to the letter. But a contract being honored is not the same as a contract being fair. That distinction takes you far longer to understand than it should. So you start doing a kind of math you've never done. Not net worth math, but time is math. You're 36. If you live to 80, and there are roughly 44 years left, 44 summers. If you have children, which you don't yet, but find yourself thinking about more now, their childhood is a 20-year window that runs only once. You've already spent the first decade of your adult life inside a building, and the remaining inventory, laid out that plainly, is more clarifying than any financial model you've ever built. Because wealth without time is a building you cannot enter. The number in the account and the life actually being lived are two separate things, and beyond a certain point, the gap between them is the only question left. The spreadsheets measured every dollar with precision. They never once measured the years those dollars quietly consumed. At 38, net worth $1.6 million, you leave. Not in anger. You negotiate a transition into a role that pays 40% less and asks for only 45 hours. People from the old world quietly conclude you've lost your mind. You don't argue. Explanation requires a shared way of seeing the world, and they don't have it yet. Neither did you at 28. Your first unscheduled Saturday, you sit in a coffee shop for 2 hours doing absolutely nothing that could be called productive. A father wrangles a 4-year-old who keeps dropping his spoon. A couple reads different books at the same table. 2 old men play chess with the unhurried cruelty that only old men playing chess seem to possess. And 2 hours in, you identify the unfamiliar sensation. You feel like a person. Not a function. A person. You call your mother. She answers on the second ring. You talk for 1 hour and 40 minutes about nothing in particular, and it is the best conversation you've had in years. That is not a metaphor. That is a piece of data. At 40, net worth $2.1 million, with the assets doing the heavy lifting now. The dividends have grown, the property stake has returned, and you can think again. Not the caffeinated, reactive fog of the 80-hour week, but slow, deliberated thought. The kind where a problem sits quietly in your mind for 2 days and then resolves itself on a Tuesday morning over coffee, which delivers the decade's final invoice, fully stamped and itemized. One good decision at 40 is worth more than 80 hours of execution at 28. That's not a consolation. It's a fact, and you'd trade a great deal for someone to have said it to you plainly at 23, in the back of a cab, at 1:17 in the morning, with $47 in your pocket and a cold dinner waiting back on a desk. The irony is almost unbearable. You spent your 20s believing speed was the advantage, only to discover that clarity was the thing creating all the value. Then one morning, an ordinary one, with nothing marked on the calendar, you wake up and the room is bright and the clock says 7:40 and no alarm made a sound because you stopped setting one months ago and your body has finally, almost cautiously, stopped bracing for it. You lie there for a moment, doing nothing, which is a skill now, hard won. 17 years and $2 million. That's what it cost to buy back the thing you gave away without realizing it at 23. A morning.